Apollo 9, Stoney, stand by for the count. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, ignition. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff.
NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, presents Aeronautics and Space Report.
New Yorkers turned out to wave hello to astronauts Borman, Lovell, and Anders following their historic moon-circling Apollo 8 mission. For them, a job well done. Coming up next, Apollo 9. "39-year-old James A. McDivitt will be command pilot for the planned 10-day mission. McDivitt's previous space experience includes the 66 orbit flight of Gemini 4. As commander, McDivitt will be making sure that when the mission's two manned spacecraft come together for the first time, that they do so smoothly and with precision. Following a recent training session where he practiced flying a lunar landing research vehicle, astronaut McDivitt had this to say about the upcoming flight.
And what we expect to accomplish on this mission is to bring out the systems on the LEM, and we have a real good systems evaluation of the spacecraft. And then it'll also be the first time we'll be flying two manned spacecraft at the same time on the same mission. And we want to work out the combined operations, because when we separate these spacecraft, they certainly have to be able to operate together. We want to develop the techniques that we're going to have to use around the moon. And we're going to take the first shot at them here around the Earth.
These artist concepts show some of the mission highlights. Here, the command and service module positions itself to meet and join up with the lunar module. After docking, the lunar module is pulled out of the adapter section. Twice, astronauts McDivitt and Schweickart will enter the lunar module through the connecting tunnel and power up its systems. And here, the two vehicles separate. 36-year-old David R. Scott will man the center seat on Apollo 9. He'll be responsible for monitoring the systems and computer programs of the command module. Scott served as co-pilot on Gemini 8. It was then that he and Neil Armstrong performed the first successful docking of two vehicles in space, a maneuver critical to this flight and all future missions to the moon. Lunar Module 3. First of the lunar landing vehicles to be operated in space by man. It is in a craft similar to this that two men will actually touch down on the moon's surface. This particular lunar module will never land on the moon. It will function instead as a test article. Engines, guidance and navigation, all will be thoroughly tried out. A rehearsal for the real thing. 33-year-old astronaut Russell L. Schweickart has been designated lunar module pilot for the flight of Apollo 9. As such, he is responsible for the systems and computer programs that go with the four-legged moonlander. Schweickart has also been practicing for a planned 2-hour spacewalk. He will maneuver outside from one spacecraft to the other, collect thermal samples, and do space photography. The Apollo 9 crew will be boosted into Earth orbit by the big Saturn moon rocket. Its 5 F-1 engines will build up liftoff thrust to over 7.5 million pounds, ramming the upper stages to 38 nautical miles in 150 seconds. Apollo 9, shakedown test for the all-important lunar landing craft. Another stepping stone in the progression of events leading to manned landings on the moon.
This has been an Aeronautics and Space Report presented by NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Has the grounding of the trainers interfered with the flight testing and the use of the LEM training?
Has the grounding of the trainer?
He's talking about the LLRV and TV.
Oh, that hasn't influenced our training at all, because we're not actually training for a lunar landing type of mission, and that trainer was designed specifically to handle a lunar landing mission.
Right behind.
Considering the training time on the earlier Apollo missions, how many hours training has training on a separate spacecraft in addition to the CSM added to your schedule?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer, because I don't think that the number of hours or those kind of things are the things that really concern you when you get to a mission like this. I think the thing that we're really concerned with is training for events. If we could do the transposition, docking, and extraction of the LEM 20 times, that's the thing we're looking for. We're trying to train for the event. If we get in the simulator and work for 500 hours and only accomplish 20 of these, or work for 50 hours and accomplish 20 of them, I think we get the same out of it. It's very complicated to try to test 2 vehicles and train for 2 vehicles, because the time really doesn't change. There's still 24 hours in the day regardless of how many spacecraft. There's so much time that you have from the preceding launch to yours, and while that time doesn't change, the training requirement does, and I think that we just have to make it all fit.
Back there.
The time of the LEM separation to the rendezvous, what is the elapsed time, please?
Why don't you answer this?
Slowly. Let me get the exact.
It's about 6 hours. About 6 hours.
On the side.
It probably seemed like 3 or 4 days.
Could you describe what you consider to be the most critical or dangerous maneuvers and what the risks are?
Dave, why don't you tell them?
If we thought this was dangerous and it was critical and there were high risk, we wouldn't do it. There are very important maneuvers and very essential maneuvers for the development of the program towards a lunar landing. But I think we've assured ourselves that not only does the hardware work properly, but the techniques involved in utilizing the hardware minimize the risk or the dangers.
I mean, relatively within the mission, which of the maneuvers are more critical?
Well, obviously, the untethered EVA with a LEM probably is, because the LEM goes to 90 miles. It has no heat shield and no tether. So it's essential that the LEM returns to the heat shield. I would guess you'd call that probably the most critical phase.
I tell you, it's very difficult to answer questions like that, because we're looking for a program, an Apollo program type of evaluation here. And if we can't do the last thing. We can't do re-entry until we've done launch. And we can't do the LEM stuff until we've done transposition and docking. It's very difficult to do this mission if the preceding step doesn't work. So if you're at step 16, if you want to do step 16 and you're at step 15, 15 by definition becomes the most important and critical phase. And if you get to step 1, that's the most critical and important phase. And if that's completed, then the next step is. There isn't any most critical phase. Each one must follow the other.
Right here.
On the extravehicular activity, you will leave the LEM, but you will not actually enter the command module?
Rusty, why don't you take this?
Who asked the question, please?
I did.
Okay. I couldn't see who was talking.
I'm sorry.
No, that's not your fault. That's correct. We will leave the LEM, and I will enter the command module up to about my waist. And at that point, we will consider that the rest would have followed.
Well, then the hatch will be open.
The hatch in the command module will be open.
And you will go about halfway in and then come back out, is that
That's
correct?
right, just to the point where I can rest, and particularly rest your hands. You see, with pressurized gloves, I might mention that the EVA is conducted along a handrail, a series of handrails. There is no other means of attachment. I have a lifeline which will be attached to me. It provides me with no functions other than to restrict me from getting more than 40 feet or so away or from the LEM in case I let go. Now, I don't intend to let go. The whole maneuver is done hand over hand along these handrails, and as a result, by the time you get, you spend 15 minutes or so squeezing a handrail with a set of pressurized gloves, you tend to tire your arm muscles. So that the thing to do here at the command module end is get myself into a position where I can hold on with my feet or my legs, so to speak, and let go with my hands and relax.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 1 hour, 29 minutes and counting, still proceeding satisfactorily at this time. The closeout crew standing by in the white room as we continue the cabin purge and leak checks that have been in progress since we closed the hatch. This is bringing aboard the 60-40 combination atmosphere in the cabin. 60% oxygen, 40% nitrogen, the atmosphere we desire for ground testing and for the early phases of flight on Apollo missions. The commander, Jim McDivitt, still participating in the emergency detection system checks, and all still going well at this time. Weather is still go for launch, check recently, and our final altitude balloon will be released shortly. However, the upper altitude winds appear to be satisfactory. We're now coming up on T-minus 1 hour, 28 minutes, and we are go for an 11 a.m. Planned liftoff at this time. This is launch control.
And when we have programmed rest periods in the EVA, we found from experience in Gemini that it's very important to program these rest periods. And this is all programmed in. And following the rest period, I'll then make the transfer back. But I don't actually get into it beyond the point of say, my waist or so. And the reason, of course, for this is that we're demonstrating a contingency transfer for a lunar mission, in which case we don't have the PLSS on our backs. We have only what we call an oxygen purge system. It's a smaller emergency oxygen system. And of course, when you have this big portable life support system on your back, you're a good bit bigger and clumsier, and we don't want to run any unnecessary risks of damaging equipment.
I'll tell you, let me expand on that just a little bit. Whenever we ban the LEM, and we have to come back contingency outside, we just don't run over and open up the command module door. I think it might be worthwhile if Dave discussed the things that actually have to be done in the command module every time we get in the LEM. Why don't you briefly run through that stuff, Dave?
Well, actually, each time Jim and Rusty go into the LEM, we prepare the command module for the extravehicular transfer or the contingency transfer outside, because we close the tunnel out each time. By that I mean we put the probe and drogue in the tunnel and close the hatches in order to maintain two integral vehicles separated as far as the pressure vessels are concerned, which means that the command module on each of the three LEM days, if you will, the systems day, the EVA day, and the rendezvous day, has to be prepared to accept an extravehicular transfer. This means that the center couch is removed and stowed to allow the volume necessary to get Rusty and his PLSS and his OPS and his LCG and his EMU and all those things that he carries with him. To get him inside takes up quite a volume. So we stow the center couch, and we're all wearing our suits without helmets and gloves, but it's merely a matter of putting the helmets and gloves on and then depressurizing the command module through a relief valve in the hatch and getting out of the left couch where I normally am, opening the hatch to its full extent, and then getting to a position where I'm out of the way, yet I can still assist in the ingress. But the command module has the capability of being completely depressurized in a short period of time, and the hatch, as you know, is designed now so this outward opening. It's very simple to operate and very reliable. If we have to do the extravehicular transfer, once they get inside, we can close the hatch and repressurize in about 6 to 10 minutes. So we have a very good capability in the command module.
Jim, from what you know about it, are there any basic differences in technique between the way the Russians dock two-man vehicles and the way we're going to dock two-man vehicles?
Well, from what I know about it, I'd have to say no. Unfortunately, in the last month or so, I've been pretty tied up with my own mission, and I don't read the newspapers or watch television nearly as much as I used to, and I don't know an awful lot about it. I'd have to look in some more detail on how they did it.
Have they not given us any hint at all about how they did it that's filtered through to you?
Not very much. I've read a little bit in Time, a little bit in the newspapers, and a little bit on TV, and some of that has been conflicting, as you probably know. I have to wait. As soon as our flight's over, I'm going to go do a research program on it, and I'll be able to tell you.
He read about their motorcade, too.
Yeah.
Jules?
I hope we have a better welcome.
Jim, I have 47 questions here, because you said to keep them all to here, right? Okay, no, seriously.
You don't get to go through all 47. You can get one and then somebody else, and then you can get...
Stay here all afternoon. First of all, there have been some reports that you three may take off without spacesuits on. Is that true or not?
Dave, why don't we just run through the list here?
You say which who'll wear them and who won't, right? Okay.
All three of us will wear suits.
Okay. Jim, this flight seems terribly complex and far busier than Apollo 8. How do you characterize it in your own mind?
Well, I don't know. We've been living with it for a long time. We've had this particular flight plan since about November of 1966. Like, as Paul mentioned earlier, we've had a lot of different vehicles assigned to it, but the basic concept of the mission hasn't changed since November of 1966. We worked with it for a long time, and at times, when we first looked at it, it looked pretty easy. Then we got into it and it looked impossible. Then we started working out the problems, and it becomes feasible. And I guess it just depends where you're standing at up and down cycle. I think we'll be able to do the mission. We have 2 good spacecraft, I believe. We have good equipment. I think by the time we launch, we will have worked out those procedures that have to be worked out in great detail, and there's some of the things we won't even be able to make up our minds on until we get into orbit, to look to see how things are. I think that we'll be able to accomplish it.
Earl, right here in front.
What sorts of failures can you tolerate in this mission and still be confident that the whole system can land a man on the moon, 2 men on the moon, and return them?
Rusty, why don't you take this?
I think it's a question of primarily what nature the failures that will occur, I wouldn't even say that might occur, that will occur, take. If we have a failure of a major system, and on analysis it proves to be a basic design problem, then of course we could end up with a significant delay. If we have a momentary overcurrent in a secondary S-band transponder and it goes off the line due to a faulty fuse or something of that kind, it doesn't mean anything. And I think the possibilities range all the way from no delay whatever or no impact whatever, all the way to the kind of thing where we're not going to land until 1973. And it depends on what happens now. Of course, as you go through that spectrum from one end to the other, the probability goes from very high that you're going to have some kind of a minor problem to extremely low that you're going to have one of these basic design problems. I think that the things we're going to learn from the mission, which are going to assist us most or give us the most confidence in getting to the moon on time, are lie more on this flight, strangely enough, in the procedural end and in the data handling end of the total picture than on the hardware end. I think it is a design verification mission as far as the hardware is concerned, but I think that the point Jim made earlier on handling all these various sources of data is generally not appreciated. And it is unique to this mission in that this is the first mission which touches on the problem. And in some sense, this mission is the last mission, or maybe the last mission, which faces quite as severe a problem in that sense. In that, you see, on the way to the moon, you're in constant contact with the Earth. In lunar orbit, you're in contact for long periods of time, a little over an hour at a time, and then another slightly less than an hour out of contact. On our mission, you see, we're in contact with the ground for 5 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 7 minutes here, 15 there, 1 minute here, so that we're continually going in and out of station coverage, and the data handling and manipulation becomes very complex because of this. So that I really think that that we're going to end up learning more on that end of it than hopefully, than on the hardware end.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 1 hour, 19 minutes and counting. We're still go for the Apollo 9 mission at this time. We're finishing up that emergency detection system test in which the launch vehicle spacecraft crews as well as the spacecraft commander, Jim McDivitt, are participating. We also have completed the purge of the cabin following closing of the hatch on the Apollo 9 spacecraft up there at the 320-foot level at the pad, and all going well at this time. The capsule communicator, Stoney, astronaut Lausmer, is preparing for some communication checks at this time as our countdown continues. For T-minus 1 hour, 18 minutes, 17 seconds, and counting, this is Launch Control.
During the Apollo mission, this vehicle, the lunar module, will take 2 men and their scientific instruments to the surface of the moon. While there, it will serve as command post and communication center. And when the astronauts finish their exploration, it will take them back to the orbiting command module for the return trip to Earth. The lunar module is actually 2 spacecraft in one. The lower half, the descent stage, functions to lower the vehicle to a soft landing on the lunar surface, and then later operates as a launching platform for leaving the moon. The upper half, the ascent stage, contains the crew compartment and flight controls. After the lunar exploration period, it is separated from the descent stage and carries the astronauts to rendezvous with the command module. This docking hatch connects the lunar module to the command module. After mating, the hatch provides crew access between the two. The small window nearby serves only one purpose: visibility during those critical moments of docking with the command module after the lunar module returns from the moon. Communications play an important role in the trip to the moon, and the lunar module is well equipped for its part of the job. In all, there are 13 antennas for the various modes of reception and transmission. This parabolic antenna is the rendezvous radar, used when the lunar module leaves the moon to dock with the orbiting command module. Propulsion, too, occupies prime attention on the lunar module. To jockey the spacecraft into position as it nears the surface of the moon, there are 4 clusters of rocket engines. Each cluster contains 4 engines used for controlling the attitude of the spacecraft. They enable the pilot to maneuver the vehicle up, down, forward, backward, or sideways. In the lower portion of the module is the rocket engine, which provides the propulsion for the descent to the moon's surface. The thrust is controllable and varies from 1 to more than 10,000 pounds. Located near the skirt of this descent engine is the landing radar unit. During the soft landing, this unit supplies critical information on altitude, range, and speed. The main hatch in the lower forward section of the ascent stage is the one through which the astronauts leave the lunar module to explore the lunar surface. Most of the interior space of the lunar module is taken up with instruments, dials, and gauges. The center panel at the commander's station has the major flight control instruments. Some of them are similar to those found in the command module. During the slow descent to the moon, these gauges provide readings on thrust and altitude. The astronauts on board the lunar module require instant access to a stream of facts, and they get it here at the keyboard for a computer. By punching coded words into the computer, the astronauts receive instant information on details of the flight and the spacecraft performance. The spacecraft pilot, like the commander, also has controls for thrust and attitude. The pilot also monitors the abort guidance panel. It gives him current information on all systems and, in case of trouble, the best procedure to use. The pilot's center panel contains instruments and switches for the operation of the spacecraft. The lunar module, crammed with instrumentation, communications equipment, and propulsion, all needed for the important job of jetting 2 men down to and away from the surface of the moon.
Penthouse, and the LM has been referred to as flimsy. What kind of a house would you call it? How would it compare, say, with the Gemini for comfort and for complexity?
The lunar module? Well, first let me put the comments that I've made in the right perspective. I tried to show that the 2 spacecraft are different. You look at that thing and it's got things sticking out all over. If you look at the F-14, it doesn't look like that. That has to fly through the air. This doesn't. It's made like that on purpose. It's not an accident that we've got all these protrusions all over it. If we made it like this, there's not a chance in the world we'd ever get to the moon. There's not a chance. It has to look like that or we're not going to get there. Matter of fact, if we tried to land that, it doesn't have any landing gear and it would be a pretty hard landing. This spacecraft is designed to handle the people living in it as you go to the moon. This spacecraft is not, and it's very crude from the standpoint of living conditions. I wouldn't give you $2 a day for a room in it, but it's designed to get us to land us on the moon. I think the comfort between there and there is much different, but it's not designed for comfort or anything else like that. If we designed a command module like the LEM, we probably would have a very difficult time getting to the moon. You just can't stay awake forever, and it's very difficult to sleep in the LEM, I think.
Jim, since the LEM is so uncomfortable to sleep in, by your own account, but since the first, second, etc. lunar landing crews do have to sleep in the LEM, why haven't you and Rusty scheduled a trial sleep period in the LEM on this flight?
Well, in the altitude chamber, I saw him asleep many times. I don't care what he says about not sleeping in it.
As a matter of fact, when I call them on the systems day, very seldom do I get a good, quick answer. I got the feeling that they're not doing anything. They're sleeping over there.
There's a big difference between 0G, because all you've got to do is let go and float in your sleep. 1.6G, you're either sitting on the floor or the ascent engine cover. There are very few horizontal flat surfaces. The ascent engine cover and the floor, and I guess that's where they're going to have to sleep.
How practical an arrangement is that, by the way?
I've never done it in 1.6G. I've never even done it in 1G. You can scrunch down in different positions and fall asleep for a while. I would think that it would be better in 1/6G. How much better, I don't know. It certainly won't be like 0G.
Even we have a hard time falling asleep in a 30-second parabola.
Yeah.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 1 hour, 9 minutes and counting. 69 minutes and counting, and we are proceeding at this time with the Apollo 9 count. Still aiming toward our planned liftoff time of 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning. All aspects of the mission go at this time. We're still performing some final checks with the spacecraft at the 320-foot level. The closeout crew, led by the pad leader, still at the 320-foot level, completing their checks. We're wound up on the cabin purge. We've checked the atmosphere in the spacecraft, and now we have placed the boost protective cover on top of the hatch of the Apollo 9 spacecraft. Countdown continuing at this time. The prime crew for the Apollo 10 mission, astronauts Tom Stafford, John Young, and Gene Cernan are now in the control room, as are two of the pilots for the Apollo 11 mission, the commander Neil Armstrong and the command module pilot, astronaut Mike Collins. The 5 of these gentlemen conferring now here in the control center as they observe the final moments of the count for Apollo 9. Coming up on the launch vehicle side here shortly will be one of the program computer runs, some final checks of the launch vehicle digital computer. This is a test in which we run the computer in the instrument unit of the Saturn V through its flight paces. This is, we put it in a flight mode and have it give us readouts on flight performance to make some final checks that always also go with the guidance system aboard the Saturn V. Our countdown proceeding satisfactorily with these various events going on at the same time. The closeout crew now starting to break up the white room. They'll be leaving the area some 10 minutes or so from this time. T-minus 1 hour, 7 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. This is launch control.
Ed, go ahead, Jim.
I'm not clear on the EVA. You say you had 2 daytime passes. Does that mean you would be outside during the one nighttime pass between?
That's correct.
And will you be out on the porch, as you put it, or in half out of the command module?
No, we'll be on the porch.
On the porch.
It's about a 2-hour period.
For the whole 2 hours. And how long will the command module be depressurized during the EVA?
The same 2 hours.
Ed?
During the EVA, will you have voice communications with both the command module, the LEM, and the ground with resulting inputs from all 3?
Yes, the way that works, very briefly, that can get extremely complex.
Why don't we just say yes?
Yes.
I don't understand the communication system, and I've been studying for 10 years, and I don't think...
Well, you can talk silently. When he speaks, all 3 will hear, assuming you're in ground.
What happens to the lab after the mission? Is it going to stay in orbit?
You want to take the mic there?
How long?
It's going to go into an orbit, I think that's about a couple 100,000 miles by something or other.
For how long after the mission?
Forever, probably.
Are you going to use it again?
No. Maybe you missed something. When we go from the LEM back to the command module, then we'll separate the lunar module. It'll be out all by itself. And then under ground control, in an unmanned configuration, under ground control, we'll fire the ascent engine to fuel depletion, which will put it in a very, very high orbit. A couple of 100,000 miles. What is it? No, shoot, I'm sorry. It's only 4,613 by 127. Jeez. But it'll be up there almost forever. No. The LEM doesn't have much of a protection against radiation, so we wouldn't want to man it in that configuration. It's going through the radiation belts.
Mr. Fender, how did you design and perfect the rendezvous radar so that you know that it will work on the first manned lunar flight?
Well, the first problem of trying to conceive and develop a radar system is achieving the functions, or getting down in paper what the things are the radar has to do. Now, this involves the variation or the range of ranges, so to speak, that the radar has to measure, the closing velocities between the vehicles, range rate that it has to measure, and the angles over which it has to measure, and the angular accuracy. Now, well, these things can be defined in terms of orbital mechanics, and you come up with a set of parameters on paper that the radar must measure and measure. The next problem then is coming up with a radar system on how to do this. This involves the development of the black box hardware, so to speak. What type of antenna you'd use, what type of radar system, and there are various types of radar systems that work different ways. In this case, we have a parabolic or dish antenna, which is mounted, the dish that's mounted in the front of the LEM, right above the windows. It's about 2 feet in diameter. Once you've converted your radar requirements into a set of hardware, you have a black box, so to speak, that is capable of performing these things by design. You next set about proving that it's capable of doing this. Now, obviously, we can't practice a rendezvous with spacecrafts to verify our radar system, because that's what we're building it for to begin with. So we have to, and in addition, the cost of verifying a radar system on spacecraft, you are using actual spacecraft, is very expensive. So we took the next best step in both the Apollo and the Gemini program. We used aircraft. Now, aircraft cannot fly as high nor as fast as spacecraft, but certainly we can fly certain portions of any rendezvous radar mission, which we did in the Apollo. We did this out at the White Sands Missile Range, where we have extremely accurate tracking equipment, and we flew little bits and pieces of the rendezvous mission as best we could. We started out flying very close, within a few miles. We opened our range up, tracking the aircraft carrying the transponder to about 200 nautical miles, which was the limit of what we could do with aircraft. As a final proof of how well we could track and how far we could track, we managed to put a transponder in Apollo 7, and we were able to track this from the ground at White Sands with a rendezvous radar during the Apollo 7 mission. At this point, we felt that we had done all of the testing we could possibly do from a systems standpoint, so to speak, to prove that we had a rendezvous radar capable of being used on a rendezvous.
How far did you track Apollo 7? Do you remember?
Well, we were able to track reliably to 400 nautical miles on Apollo 7. This is 400 nautical miles slant range.
That would be well over 500 kilometers away. For those who deal in kilometers overseas.
Kilometers, it certainly would be, yes.
Then you feel quite confident about the reliability of the rendezvous radar system then when it goes into manned flight on the lunar module?
Oh, very highly, very much. I feel it's a highly reliable radar system. It's been proven over and over again. I feel that certainly we won't have rendezvous radar troubles on any of the rendezvous anyhow.
Okay, thank you very much, Dick Fenner, the Radar Subsystems Manager for Project Apollo. Mr. Stonecipher, the Mobile Quarantine Facility, or MQF as it's coming to be called, will be tested on Apollo 9. First of all, tell us what the MQF is and then how the test will be run.
The Mobile Quarantine Facility is a sophisticated house trailer, if you might like to refer to it as that, and we'll use this facility to house the astronauts from the recovery area to their return to the Lunar Receiving Lab here in Houston.
This is the quarantine facility that's to be used with astronauts who land on the moon, but not in the 9 flights, is that right?
That's correct. We'll use them, we'll use this facility after the astronauts have landed on the moon.
Why are they being quarantined?
Well, this is a question that can be discussed, I guess, forever, but there is some concern that there are forms of life on the moon that perhaps could cause us problems if they're brought back here to Earth.
And an actual lunar landing crew will go into this facility and be brought inside in their sanitary container all the way back to a quarantine laboratory here at Houston.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control at T-minus 59 minutes and counting. T-minus 59 on the Apollo 9 count. We are go for the mission at this time. Just a matter of some 2 or 3 minutes ago, the Vice President of the United States, Mr. Agnew, arrived here in the Launch Control Center. The Vice President, who of course is also Chairman of the Space Council, here to observe the final 60 minutes or so of the count for Apollo 9. When the Vice President arrived, he did meet some of the crews for the upcoming launches. The complete crew for Apollo 10, astronauts Tom Stafford, John Young, and Gene Cernan, and 2 of the members of the Apollo 11 crew, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Mike Collins. In the meantime, 3 astronauts in the Apollo 9 spacecraft, Jim McDivitt, Dave Scott, Rusty Schweickart, continuing to work on their final checks for this flight. McDivitt and Schweickart at this time performing some final checks of the stabilization and control system. In the meantime, we're starting to bring up our radio frequency and telemetry checks with the launch vehicle. All still going well at 58 minutes and counting. Our countdown picked up following a 6-hour built-in hold at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning, and has run very smoothly since that time. We've now been in progress a little more than 8 hours with the count. The first 5 hours or so of our final phases of the countdown was devoted to the propellant loading of the 3 stages of the Saturn V launch vehicle. During this period, we brought in close to 750,000 gallons of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen into the stages of the Saturn V. We now have all our propellants aboard. We have a vehicle on the pad that weighs some 6.4 million pounds. The propellants all aboard at this time, and the flight crew going through their final checks in the spacecraft. During these 8 hours or so that we've been in the final count, all aspects of the mission have gone very well. We had one questionable item, that was a regulator for helium pressure in the 3rd stage of the Saturn V. We ran several verification tests and were able to determine that a pneumatic control module in the 3rd stage is capable of performing its intended functions, and we are able to proceed. This module plays a part in preparations for the 2nd burn, particularly of the S4B, the 3rd stage of the Saturn V. Other than that one minor aspect, which was verified by some tests during the count, all other aspects of the mission have gone very well. The prime crew for Apollo 9 was alerted in their countdown as planned at 5:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning. They then went down the hall from their crew quarters at the Kennedy Space Center and had a final physical. They were declared in good physical condition and flight ready by Dr. Charles A. Berry and a team of physicians giving the final examinations. Dr. Berry commented that the throats of the astronauts really looked good this morning. Astronaut Rusty Schweickart, the lunar module pilot, did request to take a motion sickness pill, and he did take that while he was suiting up a little later in the morning. Following their medical examinations, the astronauts sat down for breakfast in the crew quarters, the usual astronaut menu on launch day of scrambled eggs, steak, toast, orange juice, and coffee. They had some 7 guests with them at breakfast. The crew then went to the suit room where they donned their space suits and then were called to the pad some 10 minutes late, as we were a little bit behind on bringing the propellants aboard. The crew departed from the crew quarters at 8:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning and started to board the spacecraft at 8:29. The first member of the crew across the sill was the commander, astronaut Jim McDivitt. He came across at 8:29 a.m. He was followed by the lunar module pilot, Rusty Schweickart, who sits in the right-hand seat some 5 minutes later at 8:34, And the final member, the command module pilot, Dave Scott, who sits in the center seat, came aboard at 8:40 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The backup command module pilot, astronaut Richard Gordon, was in the spacecraft during this period, aiding all three astronauts in coming aboard. Our countdown continuing at this time, T-minus 54 minutes, 20 seconds. The Vice President now being briefed here in the Control Center by Dr. Kurt Debus, who is Director of the Kennedy Space Center. The Vice President accompanied by Dr. Thomas Paine, the Acting Administrator of NASA, Dr. Robert C. Siemens, the Secretary of the Air Force and former Deputy Administrator of the Space Agency, and astronaut Frank Borman, who was the commander for the Apollo 8 mission. Those are some of the key people in the Vice President's party. Our countdown proceeding at this time, all going well. Weather is go for the mission also. We have a forecast of overcast in the Cape Kennedy area, the Complex 39 area, but it is acceptable for launch. The hatch was closed on the Apollo 9 spacecraft. It's about 9:20 a.m. this morning, and our count has proceeded well since that time. We'll go on an automatic sequence in the countdown. It's about 3 minutes and 6 seconds, and from that point on down, all phases of the count will be automatic, leading up to ignition of the 5 engines in the first stage of the Saturn V space vehicle at the 8.9 second mark in the count. This will be ignition sequence start. It will take some 8 seconds or so to build up the proper thrust in those 5 engines to give us our planned 7.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. All engines should be running at the 2-second mark, and we should get commit and liftoff at 0 in the count. We're now at T-minus 52 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. This is launch control.
In the past couple of flights, the mouth of the slaw has been filled with chaff and other ersatz material. What are your constraints as to going in and getting the LEM? And in past flights also, they seem to have developed into the last hurrah for the spacecraft commander. What's your outlook for future flights, Colonel?
David, answer that one.
Now's our chance, Dave.
Well, to answer your first question, I guess, as Jim has described, the sequence of events within the mission dictate that there are probably very few constraints relative to going in and getting the LEM, because if we don't get the LEM, we don't have a mission. So I think we will, under almost any circumstance, attempt to dock and extract the LEM.
You mean you barrel through chaff? Or
no, I don't mean we'll barrel through chaff. I don't, from what I've heard from Apollo 7 and 8, there isn't anything there significant which will get in our way or harm the spacecraft. As a matter of fact, Frank Borman pointed out specifically that the slaw panels went aft, away from the S4B, which is what they're supposed to do. And I think the whole system was designed to give us the capability to get in there and dock. And I don't anticipate any problem with that, with the chaff and the extra pieces whatsoever. As far as my commander's future, I hope he hangs around, but he can answer that.
Well, I think after the flight, I'll probably just keep cutting my hair shorter and shorter so the gray doesn't show, and maybe use a little dye so I look like you and nice dark hair. See, I'm not making any retirement announcements, I'll tell you that.
Gentlemen, since the docking with the LEM is so crucial for this mission, should there develop any problem with extracting the LEM from the S4B, is there any possibility of somebody going EVA to correct the situation?
No, there really isn't. Unfortunately, the EVA equipment is in the LEM.
Jules?
And that's by design also.
Jim, since the LEM is so uncomfortable to sleep in, by your own account, but since the first, second, etc. lunar landing crews do have to sleep in the LEM, why haven't you and Rusty scheduled a trial sleep period in the LEM on this flight?
Well, in the altitude chamber, I saw him asleep many times. I don't care what he says about not sleeping in it.
As a matter of fact, when I call them on the systems day, very seldom do I get a good, quick answer. I got the feeling that they're not doing anything. They're sleeping over there.
There's a big difference between 0G, because all you've got to do is let go and float in your sleep. 1.6G, you're either sitting on the floor or the ascent engine cover. There are very few horizontal flat surfaces. The ascent engine cover and the floor, and I guess that's where they're going to have to sleep.
How practical an arrangement is that, by the way?
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 49 minutes and counting. T-minus 49, we're proceeding satisfactorily at this time. At this point, the Apollo access arm, swing arm number 9, just being removed from the spacecraft, being taken to its standby position some 8 or 10 feet away. It will remain in this position until we get to the 5-minute mark in the count. In the meantime, we're arming the pyrotechnic devices aboard the spacecraft at this time, particularly the launch escape tower, which could be used during these final moments of the count once the swing arm is taken away. All aspects of the mission still going well at this time, aiming toward our planned liftoff time on the hour. T-minus 48 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. This is Launch Control.
With the historic AS-503 flight accomplished, AS-504, the fourth Saturn V flight vehicle, now becomes the most immediate center of attention. Erection of the AS-504 in the VAB was performed in early October, and checkout and testing have been proceeding without any delay to the launch schedule. Rollout to the launch pad is set for early January. AS-504 is scheduled to launch the Apollo 9 spacecraft on February 28th for a low Earth orbital mission involving the first manned operation of the Apollo's lunar module.
They have to be they've had more time than any crew we have in simulators, more time in spacecraft, you name it. And to tell us about their current mission, Colonel McDivitt.
Well, I'm not sure whether Paul's implying we're slow learners or what, but we have been together for a long time. But the funny part of it all is that we've sort of been on the same mission for the whole time. It's the same type of mission. The basic concept of what we're trying to do has always remained the same through this maze of spacecraft and launch vehicles in different times and things like that. And I'd just like to try to point out what I think that these major things are that we're trying to accomplish on this mission. And then we'll describe the mission in some detail. And as we go through this, I'd like to have you keep in mind what we think we're trying to do. As you know, we're flying the first LEM, so we certainly want to do an engineering evaluation of the spacecraft. Anytime you fly a vehicle for the first time, you're really trying to find out what its defects are so that you can fix them for all the other missions and that it can do the mission it was designed to do. So we'll be giving the hardware, the LEM hardware, a very close scrutiny. We don't expect to find anything, but our job is to go up there and look for it. Now, after we've discovered that the LEM is a good vehicle, we have another very important thing that we also want to accomplish, and that's to prove the joint operations techniques that we've tried to develop on the ground over the last 3 years. It's one thing to fly one spacecraft in orbit and have it controlled by the ground, but when you get 2 of them up there, they're trying to look at 2 vehicles simultaneously. Instead of just the ground talking to the one spacecraft, you find the ground talking to 2 spacecraft and 2 spacecraft talking back to each other and also to the ground. And it becomes a rather unwieldy communications effort, plus the fact that there's so much information that you really have to be very careful what you do with it. You're almost overwhelmed with the amount of information that you have. So I feel that the evaluation of the LEM hardware and the evaluation of the joint operations of the spacecraft are the 2 things that we're really looking for. And in addition to that, we have some other equipment that applies to lunar exploration, lunar landings. The PLSS and the OPSs, these are pieces of equipment which provide life support to the astronaut when he goes out on the lunar surface. We're also trying to develop the techniques by which we can transfer from one vehicle to another vehicle in orbit outside of the normal process of going through the tunnel, to make sure that we have backup procedures developed in case of a problem whereby we cannot dock the vehicles together and have to transfer from one to the other. I think when we talk about Earth orbital operations of two vehicles, the one thing that we should keep in mind is that only one of these vehicles has the capability to land. Safely, I guess I should add. They both have the capability of landing. We only have one set of parachutes and one heat shield.
This is Apollo Saturn launch control at T-minus 44 minutes and counting. T-minus 44, we're go with the Apollo 9 mission at this time. Vice President Agnew now has taken his seat here in the control center and is monitoring the countdown as the crew of some 450 people here in the launch control center, another 50 or so back in the spacecraft operations here at KSC, continue to work the countdown at this time. Standing by in Houston, of course, and participating in the count, the various teams there at the Mission Control Center under the flight director. Our countdown now some running a little bit ahead, particularly on the spacecraft portion, and with the launch vehicle, we're coming up on one of our final major checks, final checks of the destruct system aboard the 3 stages of the Saturn V launch vehicle. These are checks with the Air Force Eastern Test Range to assure that the destruct system aboard the vehicle would be operable if it were required in flight. Of course, before taking destruct action, the astronauts would go through an abort sequence with their Apollo spacecraft to separate from the vehicle. Our countdown proceeding satisfactorily. T-minus 42 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. This is launch control.
Just to follow that up, as long as you mention probabilities, what is the probability of your achieving a mission in this particular mission which will permit the next step, the next flight to take place and to go to the moon within the next 2 or 3 flights?
Oh, I would say it's very high.
Out of 10?
Well, you sound like Dave Scott now. He's, every time I tell him something, he says, "What % confidence do you have in that?" I don't know. It's hard to say, but I would, let me just say, extremely high. I'd be very surprised if we find any kind of a problem which will prevent the next mission from going as planned.
Hey, one thing that should be kept in mind is that if we do have a problem, it's then the responsibility of NASA management to decide what the follow-on missions will be. So we're to gather the data, and then there will be a judgment made on that. Obviously, if it's 100% successful, there need not be much more judging done. But if it's not successful, then there's a lot of judging that has to be done.
What percent confidence do you have?
Somewhere between 0 and 100. How about that?
One point, Earl, in this data handling, we've got 2 vehicles now. We're handling real-time data at a highly accelerated mode, much faster than the Gemini situation. So for the ground, it's an interesting MCC is a...
But interestingly enough, we get our data down on S-band, and when we're out at 100 miles, we sometimes get in positions where the ground can't track both vehicles simultaneously with the single S-band antenna, and we're transmitting on different frequencies, so it is a real problem for the ground. They have to make sure they have multiple antennas at the sites where they need to get multiple data down. And it's not just an airborne problem, it's a ground problem, too.
Mark Bloom's going way in the back. Put your hand up, Mark, so you can see.
It strikes me that, except perhaps for Mr. Schweikart's EVA, we're kind of ignoring everything we've learned about timelines on this flight and really packing an incredible amount in the first 5 days. And then you've got the other four odd days after that. What are your priorities in real-time flight planning for getting rid of things in this busy flight plan if you get tired and so forth? Is EVA the first to go, for instance?
Let me take that one. No, as a matter of fact, as I mentioned earlier, if you're on step 16, you're looking at that step. There are some minor things that can go, but obviously we can't do anything until we launch. So that's first priority. Second priority is that we have to be able to do the transposition and docking and get that LEM out of the S4B, because if we don't do that, then we don't have any LEM to evaluate or any joint systems. Now, we can't operate from the LEM until we've checked out the systems in it. So obviously the thing we have to do is to check out the system, which is what we do on the third day anyway. I think that we have a set of priorities that allow us to scratch little things here and there, but we have to sort of take these things a step at a time.
Let me point out to Mr. Bloom
the
a
busiest
certain
flight plan
constraint.
we've ever had.
Pardon?
It is probably the busiest flight plan we've ever had, at least first 5 days anyway, on any space mission.
It's pretty busy, yes.
And Jim might dispute that. The first couple of revs, the Gemini 4.
Yeah.
This is Apollo Saturn launch control, T-minus 39 minutes and counting. T-minus 39, all aspects of the mission still go at this time. The capsule communicator here in the Launch Control Center at Firing Room 2, Jack Lausma, who's a member of the support crew, the astronaut support crew for the Apollo 9 mission, now in some communication checks from his console with the pilots on board the spacecraft. Coming up shortly, spacecraft-wise, in about 5 minutes or so, will be pressurization of the reaction control system for the service module of the spacecraft. These are those quad thrusters, 100-pound thrusters in 4 quadrants around the service module that are used for maneuvers in space, orbital maneuvers in the case of this particular flight. On the launch vehicle side, we're gearing up for some final checks of the power system aboard the 3 stages and instrument unit of the Saturn V, a power transfer test where we check the flight batteries, but then return to external power in order to conserve those batteries down the final moments of the count. T-minus 37 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. This is launch control.
But is it possible that the last 2 or 3 days might be eliminated from this mission?
That doesn't eliminate much complexity, Mr. Bloom. That's our resting time, and you want to take that away from us, huh?
Yeah. We have to rest up for re-entry.
Let me point out one constraint that we have, which may not be generally appreciated. The lunar module operates on batteries, as opposed to fuel cells, which we use in the command service module. Once these batteries are activated, we have a very limited lifetime. We do not have the capability to shut this thing down and say insert 1 day of doing nothing into the middle of the flight plan in order to give you more flexibility. The reason we don't is that another reason, in particular the one that involves time, is associated with the supercritical helium, which is stored on board the LEM as pressurization for the propellant tanks. The supercritical helium tends to build up pressure as time goes on, and the way the mission is designed right now, with 3 LEM days in succession, we're getting into the upper end of the operating region. If we inserted 1 extra day in there, the expected heat leak into that system would be such as to raise the pressure above the relief point on the tank. So that you see we are forced, in a way, to exercising the LEM within those first 5 days of the mission, or else jettisoning it. Now, that's the reason that we have almost all of the activity, as you pointed out, in those first 5 days of the mission. But we have really no choice if we are to accomplish the mission.
One follow. If you eliminated the apps burned to depletion, wouldn't you have the extra day with the supercritical helium?
No.
Right over here.
You mentioned the TV transmission during the EVA. What other TV transmissions are planned, and have you got any skits or unusual novel things that we might look forward to?
We don't have any skits, and I hope we don't have any novel and new things.
I think there is a camera.
We have 2 TV passes scheduled. The first one will come on the 3rd day. It's the systems day. And I can almost assure you that this is not going to be very glamorous TV. We don't have the capability to mount the camera properly inside the LEM. It wasn't designed for that, and we're going to do the best we can, but in essence what we're going to do is hook the TV camera in the back of the spacecraft, point it toward the front where we're operating, and let it go. And you're not going to hear much from us except what we're doing, because as Mr. Bloom observed, we've got a lot to do in there, and I would expect you're going to see the normal day in the life of the LEM, much more than the Jim, Dave, and Rusty show.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 34 minutes and counting, T-minus 34, still proceeding satisfactorily with the count at this time. We now have just completed our power transfer test. This is a check of the flight batteries in the 3 stages of the Saturn V and the instrument unit. Our early indications are that the test went well. We'll now remain on external power till the 50-second mark of the count, when we finally go internal for good in the countdown. The astronauts still preparing for the pressurization of their reaction control system aboard the Apollo 9 spacecraft. We have the access arm, the swing arm that enables entry to the spacecraft, located some 12 degrees from the spacecraft in a standby position. For safety purposes, we have 2 high-speed elevators locked at the 320-foot level. That swing arm could be brought back in rapid fashion if required. It will remain in this position and not go back to its fully retracted position till the 5-minute mark in the count. We've now passed the 33-minute mark. We're at 32 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. This is launch control.
You find you're on the camera.
No, there won't be.
Where's the EVA on the camera? Shall we see it?
During the EVA, will you see what, sir?
No, and will the EVA be televised?
The EVA transfer itself will not be. The second time that we have a TV pass will occur during the EVA. It's during the second day pass, not the second day, but the second day pass during the EVA. We do have a TV pass at that point, and we're still working out the final details, but it appears that the camera will be mounted on the porch and will be looking up across the docked vehicles. And it will be stationary at that point. Hand-holding it is
flying or not?
That's not definite yet.
I don't think they've lined up a sponsor yet, really, Orlando. Right here.
Will Colonel McDivitt or Colonel Scott be filming the EVA transfer? If it won't be televised, will it be filmed, or will they be taking pictures of it? Just what will be done?
Steve, why don't you describe it? Yes, we have... one of the purposes of this transfer is to evaluate it from an engineering standpoint, to make sure that we're doing the right thing, that Rusty's taking the right path at the right angles, and that he can do it most efficiently in the shortest period of time without endangering his suit from the many protuberances on the limb. Therefore, we would like to take movies of the transfer from both the command module side and the limb side. In order to do this, Rusty will mount a camera outside on the porch rails before he transfers. I will mount a camera on the inside of the open hatch, which points along the path. Both cameras will be pointing along the transfer path, one from the limb, one from the command and service modules. And when he starts his transfer, we'll activate both cameras, and hopefully we'll get the entire transfer from the limb to the command module from 2 viewpoints. And as soon as we get back, you'll get to see them all.
Right in the middle there.
As you pointed out before, when the 2 spacecraft are docked, the service module is controlling the attitude. Could you tell me where the center of rotation would be if that combination begins to move in pitch or yaw? I guess it doesn't make any difference. And approximately how high a rate you could stand before you would have to separate?
Well, Dave's an old expert at that.
To answer, the CG is approximately under the couch in the command module of the docked vehicles, but To answer your question, really, you must remember that this is about 90,000 pounds when we start out, and it's very heavy. And if one of these relatively little thrusters when we start, and they're relatively big thrusters when we finish with the ascent stage, a 100-pound thruster on a 90,000-pound vehicle doesn't move it very much. And we learned a few things in Gemini about how you wire thrusters, and we don't expect that to be any problem.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control at T-minus 29 minutes and counting, T-minus 29. We're go for our planned liftoff with Apollo 9 at this time. The lunar module, which will be tested for the first time with a crew aboard in orbit on this flight, now has gone on internal power. It's on the power of its own flight batteries at this time and will remain in this mode through the remainder of the countdown. The crew here in the control center continuing to monitor the status of the propellants aboard the Saturn V. We have now close to 1 million gallons of propellants, a vehicle weighing some 6.4 million pounds on the launch pad. The astronauts aboard the spacecraft now going through the pressurization sequences concerned with their reaction control system. Those are the thrusters on the service module that will be used for maneuvers in orbit. Participating primarily astronauts Jim McDivitt and the lunar module pilot Rusty Schweickart. We're still go as we approach the 28-minute mark. Mark, T-minus 28 minutes and counting. This is launch control.
Right in front of Carl. Let me try that again. Suppose you had an accidental vending from any of the number of engines that you have all over that combination that induced a spin rate, or something else that induced the spin rate. How high would you let that spin rate get if you were not able to bring it down before you would cast the lunar module loose?
I guess we've never really looked at it specifically because the structural integrity of the vehicles is very good. We can burn the service propulsion system from one end of the combination and the tunnel will hold together. We can burn the descent propulsion system from the other end of the structure and they hold together. So it's very unlikely that a spin rate would tear them apart. But at some point, I guess you'd say we have to separate for some reason, but I really don't know what the reason would be. We'd stop the rotation anytime any venting or a thruster failed. We've got plenty of time and enough different control systems and backups that I'm sure we could stop the rates. I guess I don't have a good answer for your question because it's
right in the middle, right?
I have a good answer for your question. When we have the LEM on the other end and we're not in it, all the thrusters are powered down, and there's no electricity applied to those things at all. And when we're in it, I don't think we want them to cast us off. So if we get into an uncontrolled situation like that and there's any implication that the LEM is out of control, then that means that it's manned, and I doubt seriously if Dave would be casting us off. I think we'd probably just sit there and figure out the problem regardless of what the rate was.
Could someone go into these golden slippers? What are they made of? What's their purpose?
They're made of fiberglass, I think. At least that's what they look like they're made of. And they're form-fitted to the boots on the spacesuit. And if I can take my hands here and set them up as my boots as I step into them, what you have to do is put your heels in first and then rotate your toes outward under a shelf sort of thing. Now that's an unnatural movement to be able to rotate a suit that way, so that in a relaxed position, once you get into them, you can simply let go and you're held there. It takes the place of magnetic shoes in space movies, you know.
Is there any Velcro on them? That's what I'm getting at.
There is no Velcro on them. It does not employ Velcro or magnetics or anything like that. It just employs the fact that you can't hold your feet pigeon-toed for very long without them springing out, and it takes advantage of that fact.
They are outside
1 minute to King. 1 minute to Jack King. Mr. King in 30 seconds. Five, four, three, two, one.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control at T-minus 24 minutes and counting. T-minus 24. The crew a little ahead with their work in the spacecraft at the 320-foot level. At this time, Rusty Schweickart, the lunar module pilot, decided he had time to ask on how the lunar module was doing. The lunar module located beneath him now in the stack. The spacecraft test conductor, Fritz Weider, came on the circuit and reported that the lunar module also is go and on internal power. The astronauts have completed their pressurization and checks of the reaction control system of the spacecraft service module. Our countdown proceeding smoothly at this time. 23 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. This is launch control.
They are located on the LEM porch. In fact, let me just draw them. That's okay.
There goes somebody's model.
Okay, they're located right there on the porch. And they're facing the vehicle, so that when I'm in the golden slippers, I'm standing there facing the front of the LEM. And just by using leg muscles and ankle muscles, I can essentially lay out flat off the porch, or I can stand all the way up against it. I mean, lean back and forth, or you can control yourself rather well. It's just like gluing your feet to the floor.
Put your feet in them.
I beg your pardon?
You put your feet in them.
That's right. You just put your feet in them, and then you let go and relax, and I can move all around and take pictures with the camera and that kind of thing. And Jim and I end up passing a good bit of equipment in and out of the hatch using this lifeline that I have. And that's the place that I'm normally located when we pass equipment in and out.
Harry?
Rusty, how will you get through the hatches? Do you have to squirm on your belly, or can you crawl on your hands and knees, or how much room do you have?
You don't have much room. However, there's no possibility of squirming on your belly or crawling because you're in zero gravity. So no matter what you do, you float. And it's a matter of turning at the right time and floating out in the right attitude. And we've practiced this. I spend a good deal of time underwater in a tank, 18-foot deep tank that we have in Houston, where we weight the suit so that it's neutrally buoyant. We have LEM and command module models underwater, and I go through this total EVA transfer and exercise quite often. And it's a matter of training to get yourself oriented in the right way to float out the hatch without hooking up on something. Now, in zero gravity, the tendency is that if you move slowly, that you can generally get through things like this without too much difficulty. But I must say that there is not much spare room getting out that front hatch with all this equipment on. Now, on the lunar surface, the technique is quite different because there you're, again, in a gravity field. Although it's 1/6 Earth gravity, nevertheless, you end up squirming around on your stomach and crawling in and out.
Well, with your hands, can you show us how you try to float? I mean, will you be belly down if...
Okay, yes, I can describe that, although it won't help much in photographs that you'll see because this will not really show on photographs, but I'm standing on the left side, facing forward. And the first motion is to put my feet out through the hatch, essentially still facing forward. After I get my feet through the hatch, I rotate to the left, and as I do that, go down on my side, so that now I'm facing over here with my head toward this end. That is, I can't do it very well here, gracefully anyway. And as I come out feet first with my toes pointing over toward the Saturn V model here. And as the top part of me gets out the hatch, I reach out with one hand and I have a hold of this handrail, so that as I come out, I'm facing this direction, feet first, and I have a hold of the handrail. And my next step is to move down onto the ladder, the top of the ladder here, and place this sequence camera that Dave mentioned on the handrail. And at that point, I then move up onto the slippers, onto the porch, and get into the golden slippers.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 19 minutes and counting, T-minus 19. We're bringing up our water supply now for the launch pad in preparation for the ignition, which will come some 18 minutes and 47 seconds from this time. We also have completed readouts on the C-band tracking beacons, which are located in the instrument unit, and our checkout still continues to go satisfactorily at this time. Despite the overcast we have, the visibility is good. The ceiling is acceptable. We are go as far as weather is concerned for our launch attempt on Apollo 9. We now have two complete follow-on crews also observing the launch, the complete crew for Apollo 10. And now astronaut Buzz Aldrin, the lunar module pilot for Apollo 11, has joined his two fellow pilots. So we have both complete crews here, along with the vice president and the other dignitaries accompanying him. We're coming up toward the 18-minute mark. Go for Apollo 9. This is launch control.
Okay, Steve.
Rusty, not to try to produce your television program, but to try to produce your television program, is there any way you could back off far enough on the tether with the television camera to get a picture of both vehicles in the dock configuration?
Well, there is no way to back off on the tether. I have no means of locomotion other than holding on to a handrail with my hands. To safely and adequately maintain my body position without smashing into the LEM or tearing up an antenna or something of that kind, it takes two hands. And sometimes I wish I had three. But there's no way to hold a TV camera and to hold a handrail and to maintain a body position. The only capability I have would be in the golden slippers to hand-hold the camera. But I think from experience, and as a TV producer, you must agree with me, that the handheld TV has not been the best. And that's been under rather favorable conditions. That is, shirt sleeve, pressurized operations. In my case, you must realize I'm in a pressurized spacesuit here, where it's very difficult to move gently and to maintain steady positions, and under EVA conditions. So that in evaluating what we've seen so far, we're tending toward the conclusion that the best way to operate the TV is to fix it in place. And it will, however, show both vehicles.
1 minute to King. Seconds, King. Seconds to King. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 14 minutes and counting. We are still proceeding. All aspects of the mission go at this time. The Apollo command module now has gone on in full internal power. This is on the full power of the fuel cells aboard. Actually, the command and service module, of course, the complete spacecraft, now on the power of its fuel cells. Up to this time, it had been sharing the load with an external power source. Also, at this time, the crew in the spacecraft giving some readouts on their various power systems, checking some final switch settings, and arming those rotational hand controllers that enable them to drive the vehicle in orbit in the space mission itself. All aspects of the mission still go. 13 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. This is launch control.
With it. One minute to King. Houston. I heard it. My set also. 30 seconds to King. Fifteen seconds to King. All right, we're working on it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 9 minutes and counting, T-minus 9. We're still go for our planned liftoff on Apollo 9. In progress at the present time have been some final communications checks, both by some key individuals here in the control center, as well as the flight director, Gene Kranz, and the capsule communicator, astronaut Stu Rusa in Houston. We made some final checks of what is known as the Astro Launch Circuit. This is a special circuit where just several key people talk to the flight crew aboard the spacecraft over the final few minutes of the count. The crew switches to Astro Launch at the 4-minute mark in the count. Just a handful of people, key people talking to them from that time on down. The remainder of the count will be the spacecraft test conductor, the launch, his name is Skip Chauvin, the launch operations manager, Paul Donnelly, and the capsule communicator here in the control center, the backup support astronaut, a member of the support team, astronaut Jack Lausma. The flight director in Houston also has a capability to talk to the astronauts. We now have passed the 8-minute mark in the count. Spacecraft test conductor Skip Chauvin going through a final status check of all his systems. The report's coming back go at this time as we proceed. T-minus 7 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. This is launch control.
Pivot. TV pool, be advised. Jack King coming up at 5 minutes on the hour, and we'll go continuously. One minute to Jack King, 1 minute to Jack King. Seconds to Jack King. Seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control, T-minus 5 minutes and counting, T-minus 5. The order has been given for the Apollo access arm to come to its fully retracted position, and now swing arm number 9 coming back to its fully retracted position. Just before this order was given, we went through a final status check. The spacecraft is go. We also got a go from launch from Mission Director George Hage in Houston, and finally Launch Director Rocco Petrone here in Firing Room 2. Our status board shows launch support preparations are complete, and the ready lights are on for the instrument unit, the spacecraft, and the emergency detection system. We are go at T-minus 4 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. This is launch control. This is Apollo Saturn launch control, coming up on 3 minutes, 50 seconds. Mark, T-minus 3 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. We are go for launch. The countdown now turned over to the control of the launch vehicle test conductor for the last 4 minutes of the count. We'll go on an automatic sequence starting at 3 minutes and 7 seconds. Final communications checks now in progress between the spacecraft test conductor and the crew aboard the spacecraft. Some final checks in progress at this time. We have the report that we are clear for firing command. That is the automatic sequencer that should come in about 15 seconds. From that time on down, all aspects of the mission will be automatic, monitored by the computers here in the control center and at the pad. 310, we have firing command. Launch sequence starts. The computer is in. The sequence is in at this time. Mark, T-minus 3 minutes. T-minus 3 minutes and counting. Our preparation is now complete. Our ready lights are on here in the control center. During this period, the various propellant tanks aboard the 3 stages of the Saturn V will be pressurizing. Primarily, we use helium on the ground to pressurize these tanks. The various vent valves will close as the countdown proceeds. We've now passed 2 minutes, 35 seconds and counting, all still going well. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. We should be getting an indication on pressurization of the 3rd stage. We have it here in the control center, 2 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. The 3rd stage now is pressurized. We'll be looking toward those 5 engines in the 1st stage of the Saturn V. The ignition sequence to start at the 8.9 second mark in the countdown. We're now coming up on the 2 minute mark. Mark, T-minus 2 minutes and counting. T-minus 2, all aspects of the mission still go at this time. The Apollo 9 crew standing by in the spacecraft. 1 minute, 50 seconds and counting. Once the ignition sequence does begin with the 5 engines, it'll take some 9 seconds or so to build up the proper thrust. The computers will automatically sample those engines and assure ourselves that we have 95% of the thrust. We will get a commit at that time, and the 4 hold-on arms will come back. We're now 90 seconds and counting. 90 seconds and counting. Vice President Agnew now has come up to the window here in the Launch Control Center along with members of the party to view the launch. 1 minute, 20 seconds and counting. All indications are we are still go at this time. 3rd stage propellant tanks have been pressurized. Final check of several panels by lunar module pilot Rusty Schweickart. 2nd stage tanks now pressurized. Schweickart confirms that he has the proper readings. 1 minute and counting. T-minus 55 seconds and counting, all still going well. We're coming up on the power transfer. Mark, 50 seconds and counting. We're now on internal power with the 3 stages and instrument unit of the Saturn V. All propellant tanks in the 2nd stage now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. The vehicle now completely pressurized. The vents closed. We are go. 30 seconds and counting.
All FCC recorders to flight speed.
T-minus 25 seconds and counting. All aspects still go at this time as the computer monitors. 20 seconds.
Apollo 9, Stoney, stand by for the count.
Guidance release, 15.
15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8,
we have ignition
7,
sequence start.
6, ignition.
5,
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All engines running.
Liftoff.
Liftoff. We have liftoff at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Roger, clock. Clear the tower. Roger, tower clear. Roger, roll program.
towards the marine now. It's Apollo 9 on the proper flight azimuth and attitude. Half a mile high.
Roll complete. Roger, roll.
Roll is complete.
And Apollo 9. Mark, mode 1 Bravo. Roger, 1 Bravo.
Apollo 9, a mile and a half high now. Velocity 1,597 feet per second.
Flight range safety is green. Roger, green here, range safety.
Cabin is relieving. One mile downrange now, 4.5 miles high, velocity 2,500 feet per second. In the region of maximum dynamic pressure.
How's it looking, Fido? How you looking, Fido? All sources agree except USB flight, we're go. Roger. Flight GED clock is leading 1 second. Upper clock RTA5 is good. Roger. Stand by for staging status
Flight
check.
record
Booster.
Trans
Go.
taking a
Fido, go.
staging status
Guide,
check now.
Capcom, we're go for staging. Stand by for mode 1 Charlie. Apollo 9, you are go for
Apollo
staging.
9 is go
Mode
for
1
staging.
and you are mode 1 Charlie.
Charlie, come, we got static down.
Roger, come. We have data flag. Roger.
Plus
Inboard
2
out.
minutes, 15
Roger,
seconds
inboard.
and go. Inboard's out.
Outboard's out. S2 ignition.
Outboard's
PU
out.
activate. Thrust is
S2
go.
ignition.
Okay, PU and thrust and okay. Apollo 9, Houston, your thrust looks good.
Thrust is go
Station, we're
on
go
the
for
second
tower
stage.
jet. Apollo 9, you are go for tower jet.
Downrange 70 miles now. 42 miles high.
Flight range safety, green
9,300 feet per second velocity.
Gimbal trim. Roger.
Standing by for tower
Roger. Lane step. The tower has been jettisoned.
Tower jet confirmed.
Look at me here. I got the tower off.
We have static data flight.
Guidance initiate. Guidance initiate flight. And Apollo 9, we're showing guidance initiate. Everything looks good.
Guidance has been initiated on the second stage.
Okay, short status check all positions. Booster, go. Retro. Fido. Go, flight. Go. Guidance. Go with convergence. Good. Raj. GNC, go.
Taking another
Ecom,
status
go.
check.
Surgeon,
Controllers
go.
now.
Capcom, we're go. Apollo 9, you are go all the way. Everything looks good. Roger.
Houston, did you read our comment that our SPS helium pressure went to 0? Indicated 0 at liftoff?
Cabin is stable at 6.1 pounds per square inch.
Roger, be advised our SPS helium pressure went to 0 at liftoff.
Oh, Raj, copy.
Okay. You got any good words on that one?
Jim McDivitt reports
Roger,
the
it is
SPS
go here,
helium pressure
Apollo
on
9.
board went to 0 at liftoff. However, we're reporting go here on the Mission Control Center. .225 miles downrange now, 75 miles high, 11,700 feet per second.
And Apollo 9, at 5 minutes, everybody's happy as a clam here. Looking good.
So are we.
We're standing by for S4B to orbit capability.
Apollo 9, you have
Mark
S4B to orbit
capability. If the second stage shuts down prematurely, we do have the capability to put spacecraft into orbit with the S4B. We're estimating cutoff of the S2 stage at 8 minutes 55 seconds.
Thank you.
We're at 6:30 now. Still go. 435 miles downrange, 90.5 miles high, and 15,300 feet per second velocity.
And the rookie says that looks beautiful.
And rookie, at 7 minutes, everything is going real great.
Roger.
Little word from rookie Schweickart there. $18,000 feet per second now, velocity 590 miles downrange, 96 miles high.
Apollo 9 at 8 minutes, everything is go.
Roger, everything looks fine here, too.
Very good. The comm is beautiful, Jim. You're really coming through clear.
Roger, you're reading nice and clear and loud, too, Smokey. We had no trouble with comm on launch at all.
Roger, copy that, Apollo 9, and you are go for staging.
Roger.
Apollo 9 has a go for staging now.
We're getting a little vibration about 8.
Looking for S2 cutoff about 8 plus 55. Retro reports we're right on a ground track. S2 cutoff.
Staging complete, and I have an S4B that's running.
Staging is complete,
we copy
S4B
staging
ignition.
complete. We're showing good thrust on the S4B. Everything is go.
Thrust is good on the S4B.
We're guiding now.
920 miles downrange now, 101 miles high, 23,000 feet per second velocity.
Apollo 9, you have mode 4 capability, and everything is go. You're real solid.
Roger, what time do you think we can shut down?
Right. We'll have that for you in a flash, Apollo 9.
Ready?
Guidance does not have a cutoff time yet. However, he expects it shortly.
My onboard FIDO here says we're doing okay.
Yes, everything's looking good here, Apollo 9.
Okay.
We'll try to have your cutoff time shortly.
Better hurry, I'm going to cut off first.
Raj.
1,241 miles downrange, 102 miles high, 25,256 feet per second. Plus 11 minutes, looking good.
Shut down.
Roger, shut down.
Okay.
Houston, we've got 103 by 89.5.
Roger, Apollo 9, copy.
That was Dave Scott giving the onboard orbital parameters, 103 by 89.5. We'll refine those later through tracking. Fido says go.
9, you are go in the orbit.
Roger.
And your CMC is go. It is valid.
Okay.
And Apollo 9, the S4B has been safe.
Roger, safe. Do you have our apogee and perigee?
Not yet, Apollo 9, stand by.
Okay.
Apollo 9, the S4B has been configured for orbit. It's looking real good, and your SPS helium is solid as a rock.
Roger, we copy. Thanks a lot.
Rod.
That's astronaut Stu Rusa, the Capcom from the Houston Control Center, talking to the crew. Apollo 9 out over the Atlantic now in contact with the tracking ship Vanguard. We're going to want to track Apollo 9 for a while before we come up with a fine-tuned orbital parameter. That 103 by 89.5 was the onboard readout from the command module computer. This Apollo control at 17 minutes. Apollo 9 now coming into contact at the Canary Island station. We'll stay up live.
9, Houston.
Let's go ahead, Houston.
Raj, we've got Canaries here. You can configure Simplex Alpha. Apollo 9, Houston, did you copy? Apollo 9, Houston, do you read?
That's Houston 5 by, how us?
Okay, you're coming in 5 square. We switched over all right, I guess, and everything looks good.
All right, what kind of orbit did you get us in?
We don't have it yet, Apollo 9. We're still running it through the computers.
Okay.
This Apollo control at 18 minutes 32 seconds. We've got the liftoff heart rates for the crew now from the flight surgeon, Dr. Hawkins. He says they are within the range the medical officers expected, with Schweickart running a little lower than they expected. Jim McDivitt, 135. Dave Scott, 120. Rusty Schweickart, 72. Rusty normally runs in the mid to low 60s. Dave Scott in the high 60s to low 70s, and McDivitt in the 70s to high 80s, to low 80s rather.
3.9 is the first cut.
Roger, 107, 98.9.
And we're continuing to massage this Apollo 9, and we'll keep you updated.
All right, understand.
The first cut at the orbit from the ground shows 107 by 98.9. This, we haven't had too much tracking yet on this. We'll continue tracking.
Apollo 9, Houston, we've got 1 minute with you at Canaries, and we'll see you over at Tananarive at 37.
Roger, Tananarive at 37, thank you.
Roger that.
This is Apollo Control at 23 minutes. We've had tracking through the Canaries now, and we've refined the orbital parameters better. We're now showing an orbit of 103 by 102.3 nautical miles. Very close to what we were shooting for. We were shooting for 103 circular. We've had loss of signal at Canaries now. Tananarive will be the next station in approximately 15 minutes. We have the tape of the entire powered portion of the flight. We'll play that for you now.
Roger, the clock's going. Roger. There's our roll program, and I will read you loud and clear. Roger, 1 Bravo.
Apollo 9, you are go for staging. And you are mode 1, Charlie.
Yes, sir.
And Apollo 9, Houston, your thrust looks good. Apollo 9, you are go for tower jet.
What's up? Tower jet, looks good. Looking neat here, I got the power off.
And Apollo 9, we're showing guidance initiate. Everything looks good. Apollo 9, you are go all the way. Everything looks good.
Roger. Houston, did you read our comment that our SPS helium pressure went to 0? Indicated 0 at liftoff?
Apollo 9, this is Houston. I did not copy.
Roger. Be advised our SPS helium pressure went to 0 at liftoff.
Roger, copy.
Okay. If you got any good words on that, why don't you give them to me?
Roger, it is go here, Apollo 9.
Very good.
And Apollo 9, at 5 minutes, everybody's happy as a clam here. Looking good.
So are we.
Apollo 9, you have S4B to orbit capability.
Roger here, roger here.
Your level since arm time is 8 plus 21. Predicted S2 cutoff 8 plus 56.
821 and 856, roger, and we got S-band Omni to Delta.
Copy, Omni Delta, thank you.
And the rookie says that looks beautiful.
And rookie, at 7 minutes, everything is going real great.
Roger.
Apollo 9 at 8 minutes, everything is go.
Roger, everything looks fine here, too.
Very good. The comm is beautiful, Jim. You're really coming through clear.
Roger, my region nice and clear and loud, too, Smokey. We had no trouble with comm on launch at all.
Roger, copy that, Apollo 9, and you are go for staging.
Roger. We're getting a little vibration about 8. Staging complete, and I have an S4B that's running.
Raj, we copy staging complete. We're showing good thrust on the S4B. Everything is go.
Okay. We're guiding now.
Apollo 9, you have mode 4 capability, and everything is go. You're real solid.
Roger, what time do you think we can shut down?
Right. We'll have that for you in a flash, Apollo 9.
Ready? My onboard Fido here says we're doing okay.
Yes, everything's looking good here, Apollo 9.
Okay.
We'll try to have your cutoff time shortly.
Better hurry, I'm going to cut off first.
Raj.
Shut down.
Roger, shut down.
Okay.
Houston, we've got 103 by 89.5.
Roger, Apollo 9, copy. And Apollo 9, you are go in the orbit.
Roger.
And your CMC is go. It is valid.
Okay.
And Apollo 9, the S4B has been safe.
Roger, safe. Do you have our apogee and perigee?
Not yet, Apollo 9, stand by.
Okay.
This is Apollo Control at 36 minutes. We have AOS at Tananarive now. We'll stand by live through this pass.
Oh, Apollo 9, Houston, through Tananarive. Apollo 9, this is Houston, through Tananarive. Roger, Apollo 9, our Canaries data shows your orbit as 103.9er by 102.3.
I understand 103.9 to 102.3.
That is affirmative, and that's changing slightly as the S4B vents, but that was a pretty good hack at it on Canary. And we'll have you here at Tananarive for about another 5 minutes.
Houston, Apollo 9, did you copy with working angle?
We have no data here at Tananarive, Dave. You'll have to read them to me.
GT was 3900 plus 00116 minus 00032 minus 00108.
Roger, Apollo 9, this is Houston. I copy the time and the angles. Thank you.
Looks like a charm.
Roger, it looks like the platform was right there. And that was a nice speedy job on that 52.
Good old auto optics.
I see, copy. And Apollo 9, this is Houston. We're going to lose you here at Tananarive in about 45 seconds, and we'll see you over Carnarvon at 5-2.
Over 5-2 at Carnarvon.
Tananarive has loss of signal now. The next station to acquire will be Carnarvon at 52 minutes 11 seconds. At Carnarvon is the go, no-go decision point for 6 revolutions. At 43 minutes 11 seconds, this is Mission Control Houston. This is Apollo Control at 52 minutes into the mission of Apollo 9. Apollo 9 coming up on Carnarvon now. We'll stand by live through Carnarvon and Honeysuckle.
Hey, Houston, how do you read Apollo 9?
Apollo 9, this is Houston, reading you loud and clear through Carnarvon.
Okay, I'm presently in the backup comm check, step 5 there on LMP 1-2, and I'm on line 5. I got the initial contact, and I got my S-band volume up.
Roger, understand you are in step 5, and stand by 1 here.
All right, Roger, and I'm standing by for a go for the backup voice check.
Raj, we'll give you a go on that in about 30 seconds here.
Okie dokie.
Okay, Apollo 9, this is Houston. We're standing by for your voice check on the S-band. Let her rip. Okay, Apollo 9, this is Houston. I did not copy anything. I got one blast in there, sounded like you keyed, and that was all.
Apollo 9, this is Houston on the VHF. Do you read? Apollo 9, this is Houston via the VHF. Do you read?
Roger, Houston. We read you on VHF. I gave you a call on down voice backup, and evidently you're not reading. However, I'm reading you up on the S-band.
Okay, and we confirmed with the site that we did not get an S-band downlink on that one, Rusty.
All right, we'll be standing by for suggestions. Let me just give you my configuration here, if you want to copy that.
Go.
Okay, I'm on the primary transponder, and I'm reading you okay, so that's okay. Everything else is in normal there going across. I got the ranging switch off. I've got the S-band aux tape in down voice backup. I've got the power PMP back up to normal, and everything else is vanilla.
Roger. I copy that. Apollo 9, let us mull that over. We're going to have you here for about another minute at Carnarvon, and then we're going to pick you up over Honeysuckle at about 50, be just about on the hour, so have your S-band volumes up at that time.
Roger, and be advised, we're mushing on through all our checklists here, and we got most everything done. The fuel cell purge checked out okay.
All right, sounds great, and Apollo 9, you are go for 6-4.
Roger, go for 6-4. And Houston, be advised, I'm going to go out of this backup comm check configuration here and go back to normal.
Roger, let's meet you over Honeysuckle in normal configuration just about on the hour.
Roger.
Carnarvon's had loss of signal now. We've got about a minute or a minute and a half gap between Carnarvon and Honeysuckle. We'll come back up at acquisition at Honeysuckle. This is Apollo Control. Honeysuckle has acquired Apollo 9. We'll stand by for conversation through that station.
Apollo 9, to Houston through Honeysuckle.
This is Apollo Control. We're showing cabin temperature 70 degrees Fahrenheit, cabin pressure 5.5 pounds per square inch.
You're 5 square on S-band, Apollo, or Houston.
Oh, Roger, that's really great, Rusty. You're coming in, and if you want to try this backup comm check again, we can support it. It's dealer's choice. And just as we were leaving Carnarvon, the downlink appeared to be coming through on the backup.
Okay, why don't we forgo it right now? We'll try to check that at some quiet period.
Oh, Roger, we concur. And Apollo 9, this is Houston. We're going to lose you here at Honeysuckle in about 40 seconds, and we'll see you over Huntsville in about 3 minutes.
Roger.
This is Apollo Control. 1 hour, 5 minutes. We've had loss of signal at Honeysuckle. To summarize briefly, Apollo 9 was inserted into an orbit very near what we were shooting at. We were shooting at 103 circular. Tracking through the Canaries showed the insertion orbit to be 103.9 by 102.3. That's changing a little bit due to venting from the S4B, but that was expected. We're well within where we want to be to continue this mission. Apollo 9 has been given a go for 6 revolutions. We're now showing cabin pressure 5.4 pounds per square inch, temperature 67 degrees Fahrenheit, And at 1 hour, 6 minutes, this is Mission Control, Houston. This is Apollo Control at 2 hours, 2 minutes into the mission. Apollo 9 is in its second revolution over the continent of Africa. Its status is go. We have not yet identified whether there is a problem in the command module computer. The computer was about 4/10 of a second late on liftoff. Over Bermuda, in this first stateside pass, we did successfully update a state vector. That is, the ground told the command module computer the spacecraft's position and velocity in reference to the Earth at that particular time. So we do have a good state vector aboard the spacecraft. The guidance officer is continuing to watch the computer and will for some time yet before he's able to say whether there is a problem or whether there is not. To date, we have not identified a problem. Just at the end of the Canaries Pass a few minutes ago, Dave Scott extended the docking probe for the first time. His comments were, "We've got a good one. It's just like in the chamber." He reported the crew could hear the docking probe extend. We're still reading good. H2 tank, good pressures on the ground in that tank that was reading 0 on board. Ground telemetry shows the pressures are good there. We had a caution and warning light on the number 1 H2 tank briefly. However, just within a second, the heater came on and the light went out. It's been determined that the limits are probably set a little too high on that caution and warning light in that parameter, and that there is no problem. We have the tape of all the air ground starting at the tracking ship Huntsville through the States and ending at Canary. We'll play that for you now.
Apollo 9 to Houston through Honeysuckle. Apollo 9, this is Houston through Honeysuckle.
You're 5 square on S-band, Apollo, or Houston.
Oh, Roger, that's really great, Rusty. You're coming in, and if you want to try this backup comm check again, we can support it. It's dealer's choice. And just as we were leaving Carnarvon, the downlink appeared to be coming through on the backup.
Okay, why don't we forgo it right now? We'll try to check that at some quiet period.
Oh, Roger, we concur. And Apollo 9, this is Houston. We're going to lose you here at Honeysuckle in about 40 seconds, and we'll see you over Huntsville in about 3 minutes.
Roger.
And Apollo 9, this is Houston through the Huntsville.
Roger, cannot maintain valid two-way range. Two-way loss, signal bearing is negative.
Hello, Apollo 9, this is Houston. You read through the Huntsville.
Roger, valid and two-way loss.
And Apollo 9, this is Houston through the Huntsville.
Roger. Houston, Apollo 9, you're coming.
Okay, Apollo 9, this is Houston. You're breaking up pretty badly. We don't have much to pass you here. We're only going to have you for about another minute and a half. And we'll talk to you as you come across the states and pass the data to you then.
Roger.
And Apollo 9, this is Houston. If you can read me, we'll see you over the Redstone at about 2-4.
Roger.
Apollo 9, this is Houston through the Redstone, standing by. Apollo 9, this is Houston through the Redstone.
Roger.
Oh, you're clear as a bell, Apollo 9, this is Houston.
Roger.
And Apollo 9 would like to confirm that you are in Omni Baker and primary S-band transponder. Apollo 9, Houston.
Go ahead.
Raj, it may be a coincidence, but we lost data just about the time I gave you that transmission to verify that Omni Baker. Did you change configuration there?
That's affirmative. We were on Delta, and I just switched it to Omni for you.
I understand you did go from Delta to Baker, and the primary transponder was on. You didn't need to change that, did you?
That's a negative. The primary was on. How you doing down there, Smokey?
Oh, we're pressing along, Jim, and you can anticipate we'll probably have a state vector we'll want to uplink over Bermuda or Vanguard on 5-10 minutes. And for Rusty's benefit, the backup comm check over Carnarvon was 5 square. It came in. We had a momentary dropout there, but we got it real good.
Oh, goody. We'll write that one off then. Okay. We got all the checklist done except some glycol loop things that we're going to do right now. And we haven't got a pipper bias check yet either. I guess you guys are going to do that.
Raj, we'll try it. We have no data right now, 9. And Apollo 9, this is Houston. For your info, we do have our data coming in now solid. And Jim, for the bias check, we really will get a good one on you after TD and E. It's not going to do us much good on the booster here.
Okay. And Houston, Apollo 9.
Go, Apollo 9.
Roger, we just got a master alarm cryo press here on the number 1 H2 tank. It's just off the lower limit here. You might want to take a look at that.
Raj, Apollo 9, we copy. See what we can do for you.
Okay, and the heater just came on and it's going back up again. And it looks like it's just tickling the master alarm there before it decides to heat up.
Raj, Apollo 9, copy. Apollo 9, Houston, that's probably Sim Soup just playing with the tolerances a little bit.
Yeah, it could be.
Apollo 9, this is Houston through Bermuda.
Roger, Houston through Bermuda. Go ahead.
Raj, we'd like to uplink you a state vector there, Apollo 9. There is a discrepancy between your vectors and ours. We don't have a real good story for you at this time. It was sort of a slow divergent trend that we would like to slip it in. There are some funnies about the liftoff time and everything that we're working on, but at this time we'd like to give you a new vector.
Okay, I understand you want to give us a new vector on the, and let me see, stand by. All right, through and accept, you got it.
Raj, we'll go to work on it, thank you.
Apollo 9.
Go Apollo 9.
Roger, I checked the O2 purge before I noticed I didn't check the H2, so I've got the purge heater on for a while, and I'm going to check the H2 purge. Might be seeing that.
Raj, you're going to be checking H2 purge, and Apollo 9, I have a nav check to go along with this state vector when you're ready to copy.
Oh, Raj, stand by on the purge and stand by on the nav check.
Raj, at your convenience. And Apollo 9, this is Houston. The computer is yours. The vector has been transferred, and it looks good.
Raj, thank you. And ready to copy on the nav.
Raj, reading the nav check. Time 00229er, all zeros. Minus 3081 plus 11622 1067. End of update.
Roger, read back 00229er, all zips, minus 3081 plus 11622 1067.
Roger, Houston confirms the update.
Nope.
And Apollo 9, Houston, we copy your disky on the ground. Apollo 9, Houston.
Go ahead.
Raj, just for your info here, we'll be sending a command into the IU just to verify our response, and this will have no effect on you, and it's just we're trying to troubleshoot our LVDC data. And we don't want you to move the IU accept switch. Leave it in block.
Houston Apollo 9. Houston Apollo 9.
Go Apollo 9.
Roger, Houston Apollo 9. Do you, we're about ready to terminate our cabin purge. Is that okay with you?
Stand by 1, Apollo 9. Apollo 9, this is Houston. We concur. Go ahead and terminate.
Okay. In work.
Raj, copy.
Houston, it's Apollo 9.
Go Apollo 9.
We're ready to extend a docking probe. You ready?
Oh boy, we're all ears down here. Please let us hear how that goes.
Okay, fine. It's in work.
Raj.
We got a good one.
Raj, copy. That makes us all happy.
Raj, it was just like the chamber. We heard it go out, and it took a couple, 0.3 of a second.
Raj, copy. And Apollo 9, this is Houston. We'll fall off of Canaries here in about another minute, and we'll see you over at Tananarive around 09.
And has AOL.
Apollo 9, this is Houston through Tananarive. Apollo 9, Houston through Tananarive.
Tananarive, Houston. Net 1.
Houston, Tananarive.
Verify Capcom is uplinking properly.
That's affirmative.
Roger, thank you.
And Apollo 9, this is Houston. We'll have you over to Tananarive here for about the next 5 minutes. We're standing by. I have not heard any transmissions from you here.
Hey,
Okay, Apollo 9, Houston, I heard just the first part of that. I'll just stand by here. Apollo 9, this is Houston. We'll lose you in Tananarive here in about 1 minute. If you've tried to call me, I haven't received anything, but we'll see you over at Carnarvon at 2-6. And Apollo 9, that will be Carnarvon at 2-6.
This is Apollo Control at 2 hours 17 minutes into the mission of Apollo 9. Apollo 9 out of range of Tananarive now, out over the Indian Ocean. Next station to acquire will be Carnarvon in about 8 minutes. This is Mission Control, Houston. This is Apollo Control at 2 hours 25 minutes into the mission. Apollo 9 coming up on the tracking station at Carnarvon. During the Carnarvon pass, the S4B instrument unit will be enabled for command. And about halfway between Carnarvon and the tracking ship Huntsville, the S4B will maneuver to transposition and docking attitude. We should have an Araya aircraft in that area and may be able to pick it up. Here's Apollo 9 at Carnarvon now.
Want to take a look at you, and we'll give you a go on that shortly. We'd like to have you go ahead and arm the logic at this time.
Roger.
And would you confirm up telemetry IU enable?
Negative, up telemetry IU is in black. Do you want to go to up telemetry IU to accept?
That's affirmative. We'd like to have the up telemetry IU to accept.
To accept.
Understand. And Apollo 9, this is Houston. Would like to have you have the up telemetry IU switch to block.
Up telemetry IU to block.
Very good, thank you.
And Houston, the logic on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 2 logic.
Roger, we copy. Stand by 1.